Hello, in this short video I want to walk through what has been included in the 0.11.3 release of Chocolatey. So let's go ahead and jump in. So in the release notes there were 5 bug fixes released in the 0.11.3 release of Chocolatey. So I just want to quickly go through those to make sure that everything is clear regarding those. So the first one there, it says Chocolatey fails to load all PowerShell helper commandlets when attempting to load modules. So this was a fairly specific problem related if you were a package maintainer who's making use of the AU module, then when Chocolatey attempted to load with AU in the mix, there was a problem in the sense that Chocolatey, the way that we changed Chocolatey to load external PowerShell modules meant that rather than simply kind of failing with or stepping away with a warning, we made it a hard stop that if it was unable to load that module, um, it 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 just failed. It just errors. Now, the way that AU integrates with Chocolatey meant that AU then stopped functioning, and that's why the helper commandlets that AU then relies on weren't available in the current PowerShell profile session rather. So that was actually a break in the way that we loaded modules in Chocolatey. So this bug was essentially a revert back to the way that Chocolatey used to work. So there's not really much to show with regard to that. It's now just working. So if you are or were using AU and Chocolatey, things should now be working. So get up to 0.11.3 and that should be taken care of. The second one there is Chocolatey's PowerShell installer module uses non-PowerShell 2 compatible syntax. Now, for the longest time, Chocolatey has worked on PowerShell 2, but what we introduced was a I think it's as a minimum, it would have required PowerShell 3 in order to be runnable. So we had a user come back to us and say that they were no longer able to use Chocolatey on their Windows 7 machine. So we took a look at that, and after doing some investigation by Corey on the team, we figured out what the issue there was, and we were using syntax that was not PowerShell 2 compatible. So it was a small remediation fix in 2 places that we needed to do, so that's been addressed as well. So again, there's not much to show there, and on this VM, I'm not actually able to show that. So this is a Windows 11 VM. It doesn't have PowerShell 2 on it, so I can't actually replicate the problem that was being shown. But that has been addressed. So if you are in that situation, Chocolatey will now work again in PowerShell 2 environments. The next one, running Chocolatey CLI with an expired Chocolatey license can result in non-commercial commands failing to run. Now, this was a really, really strange problem, but effectively what it came down to was that if you were running Chocolatey and you happen to have at some point a Chocolatey license installed, and if that Chocolatey license expired, the expectation is that it would just fall back and it would just use the open source versions of Chocolatey and its commandlets. And that, to all intents and purposes, that's what was happening. But there was a small edge case where if you, let's say you installed let's say you did a Choco upgrade all. So the first operation would have started normally, but if under if when installing that first package, it took longer than a set amount of time, when it attempted to do the next Chocolatey operation, it would then fail to say that your license was expired. That's because behind the scenes, Chocolatey is kind of reaffirming that the license is valid. So we've changed that now. So it no longer will attempt to do the reassertion multiple times within the same Chocolatey execution. It'll do it the first time round, and then it will no longer reassert within that Chocolatey execution that the license is still valid. So you should no longer see that happen. So if your license is still in the system and it is expired, it will just now gracefully degrade to using the Chocolatey open source version. The next one, installing from packages.config file doesn't support installing from other sources, e.g. Windows features, Python, etc. And this one's a little bit more interesting, and I can show you this one in action. So hopefully everyone knows that you can, rather than doing Choco install this, Choco install that, Choco install another, you can do a Choco install and passing in a packages.config file where you can define what packages you want installed, what version you want installed, etc. Now, one of the features of Chocolatey is the ability to install packages, applications from other locations, other sources. The examples here are from Windows features. So if you wanted to install the IIS, for example, you could do choco install the IIS feature and then -- source Windows features. And it would install that from that location, but it's still using the same choco install commands. Or there's other ones for Ruby, Python, gems, etc. But what wasn't possible is you weren't able to specify those other sources in a packages.config file. So what I've got here is I've got one of these packages.config files. So in here, what I'm saying is I want to install a package that has the ID of IIS web server role, and I want to take that from the source that is Windows features. And then I also, in the same execution, I want to install the winderstat package with a specific version. So now that I have this file and I have Chocolatey 0.11.0, I can do choco install from that test.config file. And what it's going to do now is it's going to inspect that packages.config file. It's going to realize that that first package, which is the IIS web server role, that comes from the source that is Windows features. It's going to run off and it's going to install that. And then in the same execution, it's going to say, well, you also want me to install the winderstat package. So I'm also going to do that. And like I say, this wasn't possible before. I believe there was an error thrown when it attempted it, saying it wasn't able to find that package, the IIS web server role, from community repository, because there isn't a package called that in the community repository. So there we go. That's the Windows feature that is IIS installed. Then I didn't pass in the -y, so it's still prompting me for that package to be installed. And at that point, the winderstat package is installed. So hopefully this is going to be super useful to folks that want to be able to control via that package.config file when they're bringing up a machine from scratch. You've got now much more control over the things that you're wanting to install using Chocolatey. And the final one was quoted install location in .registry file results in errors when attempting to automatically uninstall application. So what this is really referring to, I don't have an example of this, but I'll talk through what was happening, is that when you install a package through Chocolatey, we attempt to capture the registry keys that are associated with the installation of that underlying application. Now, in some instances, the entries that go into the registry, if it's a path, then they're quoted. So for example, if the uninstallation string had a quote in it, so bookended by quotes, then there would actually be an error when Chocolatey attempted to do an automatic uninstallation of that application when you did choco uninstall package name. So we took a look at that, we figured out what the problem was, and now if the entries in the registry are quoted, we now correctly remove those quotes before we pass them through to the automatic uninstaller that Chocolatey uses, and now packages are correctly uninstalled where they weren't before. So some really good fixes going into this release. If you're not on 0.11.3, I would encourage you to get that upgraded. But for now, that's all I've got. If you do have any questions, feel free to reach out. But for now, thank you very much.